The lights of the festival were blinding, the music pulsed through the air, and every camera lens seemed to be searching for one face, Yaman. He arrived late, surrounded by security, his expression unreadable behind dark sunglasses. But the crowd's whispers weren't about his new project or his recent travels. They were about her, the woman everyone still associated with him no matter how much time had passed, Demet Özdemir. Demet had arrived earlier that evening, wearing a stunning black dress that shimmered under the flash of the cameras. She looked calm, radiant, and untouchable, but those who knew her could sense that something inside her shifted when she heard that Can was coming too. It had been months since they last appeared at the same event, and the energy between them, even from a distance, was impossible to ignore. The reporters didn't miss a beat. Questions flew the moment they saw her. "Demet, will you talk to Can tonight? Are you two still in contact?" She smiled politely, the kind of smile that hides a storm. "Tonight is about cinema," she said softly. But the tremor in her voice gave her away. Inside the festival hall, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Cameras followed every move. When Can finally entered the main venue, time seemed to slow down. He paused, just for a moment, when he saw her across the room. It wasn't planned. It wasn't scripted. But that glance was enough to set off a chain reaction that would dominate social media for days. A source from the event later whispered to a journalist, "You could cut the air with a knife." They didn't need to say a word. Everyone could feel it. As the night went on, things only got more complicated. Rumors began to spread. Someone claimed they saw Can walk toward Demet's table during a break. Another said she turned her face away. A third insisted that later, behind the curtains near the backstage entrance, something happened, a moment too private, too intense to be caught on camera. By midnight, hashtags like #CanYamanFestivalMoment and #DemetOzdemirLook were trending. Fans dissected every second of video footage they could find, searching for clues, a glance, a touch, a word exchanged off mic. What none of them knew yet was that this was not just a casual encounter. Behind the glamour, behind the staged smiles, something much deeper was stirring, an unfinished story, resurfacing under the flashing lights of a festival that would soon become unforgettable. After the lights dimmed and the audience took their seats, the festival officially began. But the real show, as always, was happening behind the curtains. People who worked there, assistants, camera operators, PR agents, began to exchange looks. They had all noticed the same thing: Can and Demet were avoiding each other too perfectly. It was almost theatrical. Every time Can moved across the room, Demet found a reason to look elsewhere. Every time Demet laughed with someone from the press, Can's expression hardened for just a second. It was subtle, but not invisible. The chemistry that had once made them the most talked about couple on screen hadn't disappeared. It had only become heavier. A member of the festival's production team later revealed to a journalist, "You could feel that something was happening." It wasn't anger, it was more like nostalgia mixed with tension. Like they were both remembering something they shouldn't. Then came the moment everyone talked about, the backstage encounter. Cameras were pointed toward the stage, not the hallway, when it happened. But a few witnesses said they saw Can following Demet as she left the main area for a quick break. What happened next remains one of the festival's biggest mysteries. According to one insider, there were raised voices, but not in a fight, more like a private exchange that suddenly turned emotional. One assistant said she heard Demet's voice tremble when she said, "This isn't the place for this, Can." Another claimed that Can, visibly frustrated, whispered something like, "Then tell me when it will ever be the right time." Minutes later, Demet returned to her seat, composed, flawless, as if nothing had happened. But something in her eyes had changed. Her co-star sitting beside her noticed it immediately. She was quiet, the co-star later said, but her silence spoke volumes. Meanwhile, Can appeared on stage shortly after to present an award. His usual confidence was there, but his tone was softer, his gestures slower. He looked distracted. One journalist even wrote, "He seemed to be somewhere else entirely, perhaps in a moment that had already passed." Backstage staff began to whisper. Was there still something between them? Why did they both look like they had seen a ghost from their past? By the time the event ended, those whispers had spread through the entire venue. The team talk had begun, assistants sharing what they saw, stylists repeating what they overheard, and managers trying to calm things down. But it was too late. The story was out. Within hours, social media was on fire again. Clips of Demet wiping her eyes. Photos of Ken looking away during the final applause. And one blurry shot, taken by someone backstage, that showed two figures standing close, their faces almost touching before they turned away. That single photo broke the internet. And yet, as dramatic as it seemed, it was only the beginning. By sunrise, the whispers had turned into headlines. Every gossip page, entertainment site, and fan account was buzzing with one question: what really happened between Yaman and Demet Özdemir that night? Clips of the event flooded social media, slowed down, zoomed in, analyzed frame by frame. People pointed to how Ken glanced toward Demet when she smiled. Others focused on the few seconds she seemed to disappear from her seat. Even the background reflections in mirrors and wine glasses became evidence for online detectives who wanted to prove they had seen something the cameras didn't show. Meanwhile, Cannes' team was silent. No statements, no clarifications. They didn't need to. Silence, in the world of fame, often speaks louder than words. But Demet's team wasn't as calm. One of her close stylists reportedly said she was upset. She didn't expect to see him there. She thought the night would be easier than it was. Later that morning, paparazzi spotted Demet leaving her hotel with her sunglasses on and her phone pressed tightly against her chest. When asked if she had spoken to Cannes, she just said, "I'm not here to talk about the past," and walked away. That line became an instant headline. But people read between the lines. If she truly wanted to move on, why mention the past at all? Across the city, Ken was seen having coffee with his manager. When a reporter shouted, "Did you and Demet talk last night?" he looked up briefly and smiled, "We were at the same event." That's all. But that smile, weary, distant, tinged with something that wasn't quite denial, made fans believe there was more to the story. A source from the festival later told a magazine, "He looked like a man who said too much and too little at the same time." The team whispers began to evolve into something more. People who worked on Cannes' upcoming project hinted that he had been distracted during recent rehearsals. One of them said, "He's been quieter. He goes over old scripts, especially the ones from their show together. It's like he's reliving something." Meanwhile, Demet reportedly asked her assistant to cancel a few upcoming interviews. Not because she was tired, but because she didn't want more questions about him. She had spent years trying to separate her career from that one story, that one love that everyone still connected her to. But now, thanks to one festival night, it was all back in the spotlight. By the afternoon, hashtags turned into theories, hashtag festival reunion, hashtag still in love, hashtag the look they shared. And while fans debated endlessly, something else was quietly happening behind closed doors. One of Demet's close friends revealed she received a message that night. It was from an unknown number, but she didn't need to check twice. She knew it was him. What did the message say? No one knows for sure. But according to the same source, she stared at the screen for a long time and didn't reply. At least, not yet. That night, after the flashes faded and the chaos of the festival dissolved into silence, Demet returned to her hotel room. Her makeup was gone, her dress hung loosely on a chair, and the room was quiet, too quiet. She sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling through her phone, trying to escape the flood of news already filling her feed. And then she saw it. The message. It was short. No greeting. No name. Just a few words, "I shouldn't have said what I said, but I meant it." She froze. The number wasn't saved, but she didn't need to see a name to know who it was. The words carried a tone she could recognize even blindfolded, Cannes'. That unmistakable mix of pride and vulnerability that had always been both his strength and his weakness. For a few minutes, she didn't move. Her mind replayed the moment backstage, his voice, the look in his eyes, the way he almost reached for her before stopping himself. Everything she had tried to bury over the years surfaced again, raw and uninvited. Her assistant knocked on the door. "Demet, are you okay?" She answered softly, "Yes. Just tired." But she wasn't tired, she was shaking. Across the city, in a luxury suite miles away, Ken was sitting in front of the window, staring at the lights below. His manager had gone to bed hours ago, but he couldn't sleep. The festival had been a mistake, he thought, or maybe fate. He opened his phone, read her name on the screen, and sighed. He had sent that message impulsively, knowing she might never answer. But part of him needed her to know he hadn't forgotten. The next morning, he called one of his closest friends, someone who had been there since the early days of her Kenzie cuss. "I saw her," he said quietly. His friend replied, "And?" Ken hesitated. "And nothing. But it felt like everything." Meanwhile, Demet sat by the window, watching the sunrise. Her phone was still on the table, the message unread, yet it haunted her like a voice echoing through memory. She whispered to herself, "He always knew how to say just enough to confuse me." Hours later, her stylist arrived for a new photo shoot, unaware of what had happened. "You look tired," she said. Demet smiled faintly. "I didn't sleep much." And still, she didn't reply. The press, however, didn't stop. Tabloids published side-by-side photos of them at the festival, their glances, their half-smiles, even the angles of their hands. One headline screamed, "Backstage emotions, Can and Demet's unseen moment goes viral." When Ken was asked about it during an interview 2 days later, he said something that only added fuel to the fire: "Some moments don't need to be explained. They're better left as they are." People gasped. Was he referring to her? The tone of his voice, the softness in his expression, it didn't sound like denial. It sounded like a confession wrapped in mystery. Back in Istanbul, Demet finally opened her phone again. The message was still there, untouched. Her thumb hovered over the screen, then stopped. She locked the phone and whispered, "Not yet." 3 days passed. The noise hadn't stopped, if anything, it had grown louder. Every entertainment outlet in Europe seemed to have its own exclusive source about what had happened between Can and Demet at the festival. Some said they argued, others swore they saw them holding hands. But one thing was certain, neither of them had spoken publicly since that night. Until now. On the 4th evening, Demet appeared unexpectedly at a small press event in Istanbul, not a grand red carpet, not a huge premiere. Just a modest cultural gathering about film and art. She wasn't supposed to attend, but she did. Maybe she needed to be seen again, not as Yaman's ex, but as herself. Reporters immediately surrounded her, their microphones stretching forward like a wall of noise. The first question hit her directly: "Demet, are the rumors about you and Can true?" She hesitated for a second, then took a slow breath. Her voice was calm but fragile. "There's nothing to explain," she said. "We shared beautiful memories once, that's all. Sometimes life brings you face to face with the past to see how much you've grown." The room went silent. It wasn't a denial, not really. It was more like a confession in disguise, honest, emotional, but protective of her own heart. Within minutes, her words spread everywhere. Hashtags like #DemetSpeaks and #FestivalConfession began trending. Fans flooded social media, interpreting every syllable. One comment read, "If it didn't mean anything, she wouldn't have said it with tears in her eyes." Back in Rome, where Ken had returned for work, his team showed him the clip. He didn't say a word at first, just watched her on the phone screen, eyes soft, voice trembling slightly. Then, without looking up, he whispered, "She's still the same." His assistant asked carefully, "Do you want to respond?" Ken shook his head. "Not yet." But that night, he posted something on Instagram, a black and white photo of the sea, waves breaking against the rocks, with the caption, "Some people are not part of your story anymore, but they'll always be in your voice." Fans went wild. Comments poured in, is this for Demet? Why now? Does he still love her? Demet saw the post too. A friend of hers later revealed, she stared at it for a long time. She didn't like or comment, but she smiled, the kind of smile that says, I know what this means. Meanwhile, those close to the festival began leaking more details. One cameraman confirmed that he saw Can walking toward Demet just before she went backstage. He looked nervous, he said. That's not something you see often with him. By the end of the week, what began as a whisper had turned into a full-blown storm. Producers, journalists, and fans were now all asking the same question, was this the beginning of something new, or the last chapter of a love story that never truly ended? No one had the answer yet. But both of them, Can and Demet, were clearly feeling something that neither fame nor time could erase. The real explosion came not from the fans, but from the inside. A few days after Demet's calm yet emotional statement, someone from the production team began talking. Quietly at first, to a journalist they trusted. Then another insider confirmed the same details. Before long, the whispers turned into headlines. Crew member reveals what really happened backstage between Can and Demet. The world went wild. According to those close to the scene, what had taken place backstage wasn't an argument, it was a conversation years in the making. They hadn't seen each other privately in a long time, and when fate threw them into the same room again, emotions got the best of them. One lighting technician said they weren't shouting. It was emotional. Like two people finally saying what they never got to say before. Another source added that Can had reached out his hand, not to hold hers, but as if he wanted to stop her from walking away. She hesitated for a few seconds before replying quietly, "Don't make this harder than it already is." The same witness described something unforgettable. When she turned to leave, he looked down, took a deep breath, and whispered something like, "I never stopped caring." I couldn't hear the rest. But she froze when he said it. Those words, "I never stopped caring," became the most repeated phrase on social media for the next 48 hours. Memes, edits, slow-motion videos, every fan wanted to believe it was true. And yet, for both of them, reality was far more complicated. Demet, during that same week, was filming a new drama series. Her co-star mentioned in an interview, she's professional, but there's a sadness in her lately. She goes quiet between takes, like her mind's somewhere else. Can, on the other hand, was preparing for a new European campaign. His PR team tried to shift attention toward his work, but journalists wouldn't let it go. During one press event, a reporter asked directly, "Can, is it true you told Demet you never stopped caring?" He smiled, adjusted his jacket, and replied carefully, "Some moments belong only to the people who lived them. If I said something, it wasn't meant for the world to hear." It was a masterclass in mystery, and it only fueled the fire. Behind closed doors, though, Can wasn't as composed as he seemed. One of his close friends later revealed, he couldn't stop thinking about her. That night replayed in his head over and over. He said, "It felt like I was back in that first day we met, everything came rushing back." Meanwhile, Demet received another message. This one wasn't as emotional, but it was just as powerful. It simply said, "For what it's worth. I'm sorry." She didn't reply this time either, but she saved the message. The next day, paparazzi captured her walking alone through the streets of Istanbul, wearing a long beige coat and no makeup. The photo went viral instantly. Fans wrote that she looked heartbroken, others said she looked free. But only she knew the truth, she was somewhere between those two feelings. The whispers from the team had done their job. The world now believed they had seen a glimpse of something real, something that fame had buried but time had not erased. And somewhere in all that noise, between truth and rumor, Yaman's silence began to speak louder than anything he could have ever said. The noise had finally begun to fade. Days turned into weeks, and yet, the echoes of that festival night still followed both of them, not through the tabloids or the headlines anymore, but in the quiet hours of their own minds. For Can, the festival had been more than an event. It was a reminder. A reminder of everything he had left unsaid. He tried to move on, the interviews, the shoots, the constant travel, but nothing silenced that image of her turning away, her eyes full of something between pain and forgiveness. One night, back in Rome, he sat alone on his terrace overlooking the city. The lights shimmered below, but his thoughts were miles away. He poured a glass of wine, scrolled through his phone, and stopped at a photo, one from years ago. The two of them, smiling on set, caught mid-laughter. A memory so alive it hurt. He whispered to himself, it was never just a role. Across the sea, in Istanbul, Demet was facing her own storm. She had done everything right, kept quiet, stayed focused, smiled for the cameras. But deep inside, she couldn't forget that look in his eyes. The one that once made her believe anything was possible. Her closest friend asked her one evening, "Do you still think about him?" Demet didn't answer. She just looked out the window and said, "It's hard not to think about someone who knew you before the world did." For a while, she thought about calling him. She even opened his name in her contacts once, stared at it, then closed it again. Because what could she say? "Hi, I miss you?" No. That wasn't her. Not anymore. But destiny has a strange sense of timing. A few days later, both were invited, separately, to another international event. When the invitations reached their teams, both paused for a moment. The same place again. Another festival. Another chance, or maybe another test. Cannes' manager asked, "Do you want to go?" He nodded. Yes. Maybe it's time to stop running from ghosts. Demet hesitated longer. But in the end, she said softly, "If I don't go, the story wins. I'm not afraid of my past." When the night finally came, the air was electric once more.